Hello everyone. The news is that having invited you all to attend this session, Anand sir has gone missing. Reports say that he was seen at a friend's birthday party yesterday, and ever since he is missing. Well, just a while ago, I received a video saying he has been found under a tree. Let us find out.
Hey there! Good evening, everyone. Sorry for the confusion. Wondering what I am doing in this Almira Hotel? Weekend lockdown akele. So I thought I'll take you out and say hi. Wondering what we are going to discuss today? Oh, you already know that. Not about Buddha under the tree, but about William Shakespeare. The name that causes shake and fear. William Shakespeare. Pera ketale summa adirdilla. Yeah. So today we'll talk about the Bard of Avon. But the problem is, his authorship in itself has been a long debated question. To such an extent that certain critics claim that William Shakespeare never existed. They say it's Francis Bacon in disguise. Some say it's Earl of Derby. Some say it's Earl of Oxford. Some say it's Queen Elizabeth pseudonym. Then, among these disputed range of theories, a bit more comparatively valid one is that William Shakespeare is none other than Christopher Marlowe in disguise. Well, before taking you to that debate, let me just come back to the Earl of Oxford debate, because facts matter. In 1920, J. Thomas Looney came up with a book titled Shakespeare Identified, as if he was unidentified until then. 1920, mind you. Just like Sukumara Kurupine Kandathal. Shakespeare identified in the year 1920 by J. Thomas Looney. But then, let's come to the Christopher Marlowe debate. The Christopher Marlowe debate is a bit more convincing because, as you know, Shakespeare supposedly was not educated. And on contrary, we have a group of people called the university wits, the playwrights, which includes Greene, Nash, Peele, and of course Christopher Marlowe, who have received education either from the Oxford or the Cambridge. And these group of playwrights were phenomenal in terms of their language, stagecraft, and writing. And quite coincidentally, it resembles with a so-called dimwit, a Catholic. Mind you, England was a Presbyterian country, so Catholics were forbidden from a lot of things, even at the times of the neoclassical Augustan revival of Alexander Pope. It's quite a contrast, isn't it? Two Catholics, William Shakespeare and Alexander Pope, go on to become the two most wealthy people in England by writing. I myself have gone through this question way back in my school days during the parents' meet by the teachers. What is this guy going to become by following creative pursuits? Teach him science, ask him to concentrate on maths. So back then, we are talking about the 16th and 18th and 17th centuries, we have two Catholics in William Shakespeare and Alexander Pope go on to create history in terms of wealth. Wealth to such an extent that Shakespeare goes on to purchase the Globe Theatre where his career started. And it gets burnt down one fine day while playing a historical play. But despite that, he's able to live a prosperous life and rebuild the Globe again a few years later. Let's come back to Christopher Marlowe debate. Dogs bark. So do critic. Let them bark. So, coming back to Christopher Marlowe. Marlowe died young. He died on 30th May 1593. And critics argue that it is from that time onwards that we can see Shakespeare blooming. Most of his best plays, especially his tragedies, came out after 1593. Critics also look at a lot of startling resemblances. The language that Marlowe uses in Edward II is seen to be echoed in most of Shakespeare's historical plays. Take the case of the balcony scene that comes in The Jew of Malta as opposed to those that in Julius Caesar. The lines are quite resonant. So critics argue that Christopher Marlowe feigned his own death in that brawl that happened in a tavern on 30th May 1593 and continued to write from underground as William Shakespeare. Alright, so costume change, scene change. Let's move on from Christopher Marlowe to William Shakespeare. But before doing so, let me just mention another debate regarding Shakespeare's spelling. Oh yeah, you may have lost that 1 mark for writing his spelling wrong. S-P-H-E-R-E, S-P-E-A-R-E, S-P-E-R-E, or S-P-H-R-E. Well, most of these spellings are differently found among legal records in London of that time, of those times. So, which exactly is William Shakespeare is a question for you to ponder. Let's just move on then to the Renaissance England. Needless to say, like Trevelyan pointed out, Elizabethan era was the golden age of England. Queen Elizabeth was an art lover, a patron, and a wonderful, responsible leader. So during her time, Shakespeare's theatre group was known as Lord Chamberlain's Men. And please remember that a few years later, if I remember correctly, in 1603-4, when James succeeded Elizabeth to the throne, he patronized Lord Chamberlain's Men, and since then they came to be called as the King's Men, right? Not the Kinsmen, but the King's Men. Rajavinte Kalikar. Nonetheless, they were Lord Chamberlain's Men when Queen Elizabeth reigned, and she was also supportive to the theatre acts. So, William Shakespeare was born in the year 1564. He died in 1616. He wrote plays, needless to say, almost 37 of them. There are still debates on that. There may be a few more to be figured out. A play was figured out recently, so they say 38 maybe. There were some which were collaborative in nature. A few of them were already known tales written in collaboration. So debates are large, but nonetheless 37 and 154 sonnets and 2 long poems. He married Anne Hathaway, not Anne Boyle, Anne Hathaway. Anne Hathaway, who was 8 years elder to him when he married her. He was 18 back then and she was 26. Vivaha Prayam 21 ഉയർത്തണമെന്നൊക്കെ പറയുന്നതിന് മുമ്പ് she was 26 when an 18-year-old Willie married her. And he had 3 children with Anne. One of those died very young and his name was Hamnet. Oh no, you heard it right, not let, it's net, N-E-T. Well, now you know why the National Eligibility Test has its name. A tribute to Shakespeare's son, Hamlet. Oh no, I was simply kidding. It's not for that, but nonetheless, yep. Hamlet had a child with the name Hamlet, who died. Perhaps the reason why he termed his protagonist Hamlet. Well, you all assembled here in search of a face. Unfortunately, that person is indeed missing. The one that you are listening to is something that resembles his voice. Do not mistake the voice to be the face. This is also a LibriVox recording. But then, this voice would like to tell you as we begin, remember me. Remember me. No, I'm not the ghost in Hamlet. I could well be that tick box when you try to get or log into your Facebook account, which says, remember me. And Freddie Kamal, if I get logged out, remember me to this space. I am a spectre, a spectral presence, but remember me. I know you are in search of a face. That face may or may not come to you like Godot. But before we begin, let me pay homage to one of the best Shakespearean teachers that we've ever been through in Kerala, one late Dr. Madhukar Rao, who is the former principal, Maharaja's College Ernakulam, who has authored a wonderful glossary titled Literary Salads. Secondly, let me remember Dr. V.C. Harris, former Dean, School of Letters, Kottayam, amidst again his absence in our lives anymore. Another book to refer is A History of British Colonialism, Social and Literary Aspects, one of the best history English textbooks that you would ever come across. And as you all know, needless to say, today's session was supposed to be handled by Dr. G. Rangarajan, again former head Department of English, Maharaja's College, Ernakulam. He is unwell. Hopefully he'll meet us sometime soon. Remembering all these visionaries, legends, while or before talking about Shakespeare, let us get this day started. Well, Anand Krishnamurthy is still unavailable Krishnamurthy, but then he has sent us another video on what to discuss regarding Shakespeare. Because one could go on talking for an hour about Shakespeare the poet. One could go on for a day talking about Shakespeare the playwright. I could take a play and go on talking about it for hours and hours and hours. So in, say, about 75 to 80 minutes, what facets of Shakespeare are we gonna delve deep into? Let's figure it out. I repeat, remember me. I am a spectre. Well, what do we talk about Shakespeare? That too in a session like this, where we have an hour and a half or so. It's quite difficult to touch Shakespeare in entreaty, not in 90 minutes, even if you take 900 days. Shakespeare the man, his plays, his sonnets, his poetry. There are quite a lot to talk about him. And if all this was not enough, as the popular academic joke goes around, his critics. There is this popular joke that if William Shakespeare and A.C. Bradley went to write an exam on Shakespearean plays, Shakespeare would terribly fail and A.C. Bradley would emerge victorious. So most of his plays, as we know today, has its underlying meaning figured out or dug out by his critics. Whether it is A.C. Bradley or T.S. Eliot or Sir Sigmund Freud or Wilson Knight, it is these critics who have made Shakespeare who he is today, or so does the academia claim. Apart from this, there are plenty of adaptations and retellings of Shakespearean plays. Take the case of Hamlet. There are plenty of play adaptations. There are plenty of movie adaptations. Not only in an international level. If you go to regional level, there is a Malayalam adaptation, there is a Hindi adaptation, there is a Marathi adaptation of Hamlet. So, I would like to get started by telling you that I can only touch the tip of not the iceberg, but the Shakespearean berg. I'll touch the tip. I'll try to somewhat cater to some basic essentials of Shakespeare. And maybe by presenting a few keys, unlock these fears that you have about the bard. So no fear Shakespeare, as they say.
Good evening, everyone. This is Aishwarya. And yesterday, after my session, Anand sir had called me back and he told me that he liked the session.
നിനക്ക് എന്തോത്തിന്റെ കേട് കൊച്ചേ?
Sorry. Okay, so today he sent me this video and asked me to share this with you all. So let's begin. Give me a second, I'll just share the screen.
Right then. Now let's move on to the bards, not the bards plays. William Shakespeare's career as a playwright can be divided into 4 stages. The first stage, or the first period, which could be treated as an apprenticeship. The second, where he mastered his art. The third, where he discusses the problems of evil in the world. And fourth, where he creates a new dramatic form that is popularly known as tragicomedy. The mixing of tragedy and comedy genres together as tragicomedy. Now let's quickly go through his plays. Speaking about his early comedies, it includes The Comedy of Errors, Love's Labour's Lost, The Two Gentlemen of Verona. No, not the story that you're familiar with A.J. Cronin. That's an entirely different one. But this is a play titled The Two Gentlemen of Verona. And it was followed by the English histories written in blank verse by the Bard, which includes the major tetralogy of Richard II, Henry IV in 2 parts, Henry V, and the minor tetralogies in Henry VI in 3 parts, and Richard III or Richard III. Moving on from there to the next stage of his career, we could notice the sprouting of mature comedies from Shakespeare. It includes Much Ado About Nothing, Twelfth Night, Merchant of Venice, where we see strong characterizations like Portia, Shylock the Jew, who resembles a lot of money lenders in our day. Especially during the COVID lockdown, we could see this money lending mafia at its peak. So we could see Shylock way back in The Merchant of Venice. As You Like It. These all came in the mature comedies section, and then came the problem plays, which is also called as dark comedies. So what are the attributes of problem plays? They had a happy ending. They had a somber or tragic tone. It had a cynical, disillusioned attitude to life, fondness of objectable characters and incidents. It exposed the falsity of romance, the sordid realities. And which were problem plays or dark comedies written by Shakespeare? There are 3 of them that we could distinctly identify. All's Well That Ends Well, Measure for Measure, Troilus and Cressida. Mind you, Troilus and Cressida is a title experimented also by Geoffrey Chaucer, Thomas Lydgate, John Dryden, and so on. And then Shakespeare moves on to his next phase, where he started writing his great tragedies. How many tragedies has he penned? There are 4 of them. Which are they? Hamlet, Othello, King Lear, and Macbeth. Speaking about the distinction between these 4 plays, one could observe that Hamlet is the longest tragedy written by Shakespeare, whereas Othello is the shortest. If you ask why is Othello the shortest, or why, if you look at the protagonists, all these 4 protagonists, we could see a lot of monologues, soliloquies, or speeches, and we could see that the dialogues are comparatively complex. But if you look at Othello, you could see that the protagonist has the simplest diction. So why is it so? It is so because the principal character, the principal actor who played Othello had stammering. He was a wicked. So because he had the stammering, Shakespeare had to compromise on the language so that he could speak without stuttering and stammering. Presentable. And that's why it happens to be so. Same applies to Hamlet. As you all know, Hamlet has been drawn immensely from various popular legends already, including the play by Thomas Kidd, the Spanish tragedy. But then, in all those legends, Hamlet is a teenager, a student. But when it comes to Shakespeare, well, he does not say that Hamlet is this much old, but there are a couple of scenes where he points out that Hamlet is about 30, 32 years old. How? I'll give you one instance. There is this gravedigger scene where Hamlet and Horatio arrive at the gravediggers. Hamlet gets amused by the look of the skull. He examines it with by contemplating the ephemerality of life, and he asks the gravedigger whose skull this is. To which they reply, it is the Yorick's skull. And then Hamlet is full of nostalgia because it was Yorick the clown, the jester of the court, who took care of him when he was a baby. So he looks back, and the gravediggers comment that these many moon years ago, when King Hamlet returned after a war, Prince Hamlet was born. So if you convert that into figures, that becomes 30-32. So why did Shakespeare do that? Probably because Richard Burbage, the principal actor that Shakespeare had back then, was in his early 30s. And because everybody knows that Hamlet is in his 20s, they would take a dig at Shakespeare if he makes somebody who's 30-35 act Hamlet. But then Shakespeare felt that in order to portray the complexity and the dullness and the procrastination of Hamlet effectively, only Burbage could do that. The rest would be garbage, or garbages. So in order to do that, he made Richard Burbage the principal actor playing Hamlet. And because he wanted to shut down the critics, there were a couple of places where he mentioned that he's close to 30-32. All right, so the four tragedies by Shakespeare: Hamlet, Othello, King Lear, and Macbeth. Mind you, all these plays are distinct in its own ways. They speak about the four sort of tragic flaws. Yeah, ambition, pride, procrastination, of course, vaulting ambition, pride, procrastination, ego. Yeah, remember Iago. Look at the sort of antagonists that we have in these plays. Apart from Shylock in that comedy, come back here, you have Iago. You have, well, an antagonist and his wife being semi-protagonists. Sorry, protagonist and his wife turning semi-antagonists, Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. So quite a lot of interesting characterization going on, quite a lot of interesting soliloquies coming through in these four tragedies. Remember King Lear's popular lines: "As flies to wanton boys are we to the god, they kill us for sport." Strange, isn't it? Quite true, deeply philosophical when it comes to our life. Again, there is a false analogy that's attributed to Shakespeare. Death is a cruel monster who comes without the knowledge of time. Maranam Rengabodhamillata Komaliye Poleyana. That's actually not told by Shakespeare. That's told by a character in M.T. Vasudevan Nayar's Malayalam novel Manye. There are so many people who falsely attribute this to the bard. Moving on to his further plays, the next one are called Roman plays. They include Julius Caesar, Antony and Cleopatra, and Coriolanus. Coriolanus championed the cause of democracy. It is called as a testimonial for democracy, or an outcry for democracy. Then we come across his romances, playful romances, as in Cymbeline, The Winter's Tale, Pericles, which did not appear in the first folio, mind you. Pericles, which is debated to be co-written by Shakespeare, in fact a collaborative work. Then there are people who claim that it's he himself who wrote that. Nonetheless, it didn't appear in the first folio. It appeared in 1623 by Hemminge and Condon. Then comes his swan song. What's its name? Not Tempest. There's a definite article there, a specific article. The Tempest. The Tempest, because it was an illusionary tempest created in order to bring his kins into that island by Prospero. The play also witnesses a strong characterization from a post-colonial perspective, that of Caliban. We'll talk about characterization a little while later, but nonetheless, this is a brief overview of the bard's playwriting. I would also like to mention at this point lines written by his fellow screenwriter or theatre writer friend, Ben Jonson. So Ben Jonson, in his prefatory poem to Shakespeare's first folio, remarks thus: "Tell how far thou didst a lily outshine, Lyle, or Sporting Kid, Kyd, or Marlowe's mighty lines," referring to the three great university wits of the time, emphasizing on Shakespeare's dignity and stature when compared to those who were fortunate to receive university education. Shakespeare remains unparalleled till date in terms of his writing and stagecraft. Well, what was that? If you're wondering what that was, you may be familiar with a play within a play in Shakespearean theatre. This was a class within a class. Interesting, isn't it?
Hi everyone, I am Freddy. I have been one of those fortunate learners who have watched Anand sir act in his drama classes. Now, I was extremely fortunate to shoot him enact his soliloquy. Let us watch that next, shall we?
All the world is a stage. When we men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances. And one man stand plays many parts. His hand speaks 7 ages. At first the infant, mewing and puking in the nurse's arms. Then the whining schoolboy with a satchel and shining morning face, creeping like snake, unwillingly to school. And then the lover, signed like furnace with the woeful mallet, lead to his mistress' eyebrow. Then the soldier, full of string jokes and look like a bug, jealous in honor, satin and quirk in world, seeking the bubble reputation, even in the cannon's mouth. And then the justice, in fair round belly, with a good keeper back, with a savior and an old cover hat, full of vessels and modern senses. And so he plays his part. 16 shifts into the lean and simple man, with spectacles on nose and pouch on side. His youthful voice well saved a world too wide for his shrunk shank and his big manly voice, turning again towards childish rebel brides and whistles in the sounds. Last scene of all, that instant swing events to stream. The second childishness in mere oblivion. Sans teeth, sans style, sans taste, sans everything. Well, at this point of time, I must take a minute to share with you that you must be aware of the distinction between soliloquy and aside. Also, have a deeper understanding about the term monologue and a poetic term called the dramatic monologue. Also, I would like to spend a minute enlightening you about Shakespeare's soliloquies. There are quite a lot of them, particularly in Hamlet. There are also quite a lot of soliloquies that you would come across in Macbeth, in King Lear, in Julius Caesar, and so on. Apart from that, Shakespearean plays are also full of long speeches. We must also be aware of the fact that these are these are permitted also by the use of blank verse. Shakespeare wrote his plays not in prose but using blank verse in abundance. So that helped in glorifying this entire effect of soliloquies. I repeat, remember me. I shall be here in my absence. I shall not wither away, for I have a duty towards you. Now, let us discuss very briefly characterization in Shakespeare's plays. There are a few key concepts or key terms that I would like you to be familiar with. One distinction is between an individual and types, and the other distinction is between round characters and flat characters. So what is the distinction between an individual and a type? We as human beings are all prone to our own follies. One could be a thief, one could be a liar, one could be a pervert, promiscuous, boastful. But then, apart from individual attribute, if it becomes a common type attribute, then that comes to be called as a type. I'll give you an example. These are just broad generalizations. I could be a soldier, a retired soldier, and I could afford to be boastful about my times at the border. But then, the moment you feel that all soldiers are like this, once they complete their terms of service and they come back, they become boastful. Remember that Malayalam movie, India-Pakistan border, yeah? So if you think that all the soldiers are boastful post-retirement, then the particular soldier who's being boastful in your play becomes a type rather than an individual. Take the case of perversion. Suppose a character, a doctor or a teacher or anybody, is promiscuous or is perverted in his approach to the people surrounding him. An individual can afford to have that flaw. But then if you think all these doctors or all these teachers are like this, then that becomes a type. Take the case of Shylock. We just discussed him a little while ago. Shylock individually would merely stand as a money lender. But then, because we come across a lot of money lenders who are as greedy and cruel as Shylock becomes a type. Now, let's move on to another distinction between round and flat characters. The basic difference, the fundamental difference between round and flat characters is that the round characters are like the characters played by Mohanlal. They undergo a character transformation by the time the play or the novel or the movie comes to a closure. Whereas the flat characters are like characters played by Jagadish, Salim Kumar, or Johnny Lever. They continue to retain their attribute, whether it's good or bad. They may be Talligollis, they'll continue to be Talligollis throughout. Or they may be foolish, they'll continue to be foolish throughout. They don't undergo any transformation whatsoever. One major such character that you may sometimes not be familiar with is Falstaff, Falstaff. Falstaff appears in two historical plays, or two plays by William Shakespeare, titled Henry IV, Part 1 and Part 2. Henry IV Part 1 is the story of Prince Henry, who's going to succeed Henry IV as the next king. And as a prince, he does all those things that young adolescents like us would have done. He hangs out with Falstaff, he steals, he catches petty fights, he does a lot of mischief. By the time Henry IV Part 1 comes to an end, Prince Henry becomes King Henry. So Part 2 is about the transformation of the prince and the non-transformation of his friend, his bosom friend, Falstaff. Falstaff continues to be the same. He drinks, he boozes, he parties, he womanizes, and he does all the mischief. And when the friend becomes the king, he has to honor the duty or the calling of the duty. And he has to overlook his friend's affections and act as a king. This causes trouble to Falstaff. So in that case, Falstaff is a flat character and Henry becomes a round character. He undergoes a character transformation. Similarly, there are plenty of characters that we could go on discussing for ages made by Shakespeare. Women characters, if you want to. Cleopatra, Portia, Gertrude, Ophelia. Then we have Lady Macbeth. So plenty of wonderful characters, but remember all those women characters were played by adolescent men of 14, 15-year-old who didn't have a mustache. Similarly, a lot of interesting characters come in Shakespeare's plays, whether it's Puck or whether it's Caliban, not protagonists alone, not Hamlet, Macbeth, King Lear, or Othello, or Romeo, or Antony. But apart from that, even minor characters sometimes. Take the case of Polonius, for instance. So there are plenty of such characters that spring forth in Shakespeare's plays. Again, a note of mention must go to Caliban. Caliban gets taught by Prospero the language. When seen from a post-colonial context, his character deserves a lot more significance and limelight. So, in one specific scene, Caliban goes on to say, "You taught me language, and my profit on it is I know how to curse. The red plague rid you for learning me your language." Right? You taught me language, and the benefit that I own is that I know how to curse you using the language that you taught me. May the red plague rid you. Baad mein jao for teaching me your language. You look at post-colonial narratives, you look at Chinua Achebe, you look at Ngugi wa Thiong'o, you could see that it's literally a manifestation of this. May the red plague rid you. So thus was Bard. Just like Dr. Johnson pointed out rightly, his characters were universal in nature. They withstood the barriers of time, nations, generations, spaces, gender. Even today, we see a movie like Unnamed Rasulum and do not immediately think that, oh, this is Romeo and Juliet repeated. Even in today's world, we see these stories. The vaulting ambition of Macbeth. We can have a lot of parallels in India or in the world. Take the case of King Lear, the father being deserted by his or her own children for the property. So all these characters, or most of them, were or are universal in nature. And that's where the legacy of the bard rests.
Okay, let's see Anand sir on stage again.
Well then, talking about Elizabethan theatre, there were two frontier theatres, the Blackfriars and the Globe. Nonetheless, both of them defied our current theatrical notions. Theatre back then was deprived of the three walls that we are familiar with. There was no movable curtain, and most importantly, women characters were played by adolescent men. Remember, all or most of the Shakespearean heroines are popular. Talk about Lady Macbeth, talk about Gertrude, talk about Portia, talk about Juliet, talk about Portia. They were all played by adolescent men of say 14, 15-year-old who hadn't sprouted their mustache yet. Talking about stagecraft, as I told you, there wasn't the three-wall engraving, there was no drop curtain. So for instance, let's take this scene in Hamlet, where you have Hamlet visiting her mother's chamber. So Hamlet goes to meet Gertrude. Hamlet is already frustrated because his father's ghost tells him that he was murdered or assassinated by his own uncle. So he is not sure about his mother's role. He's pretty agitated. And meanwhile, mother has been entrusted by Claudius to figure out what's in Hamlet's mind. So apart from trusting Gertrude, he sends Polonius to spy at Hamlet. So Hamlet comes all the way to Gertrude and engages in a conversation with his mother. And while this conversation ensues, unfortunately, Polonius, who's behind a screen, this is also called the arras screen, A-R-R-A-S, the arras screen. So Polonius, who's behind the arras screen, listening to them, kind of stumbles and there's a noise that ensues. So Hamlet, misunderstanding Claudius to be Polonius, stabs Polonius saying, "Rats, rats, rats, bloody rats." And then he moves the curtain and he's horrified to see his fiance's father. Then, pretending to be mad, Hamlet continues some conversations with Gertrude and both of them exit. So as they exit, the next scene happens in Claudius' chamber, where they are dining and they are looking for a missing Polonius. So before that scene, as these two exit, what happens to the stabbed Polonius? Let's have a look at Polonius. Polonius came in, he eavesdropped on Hamlet, he stumbled upon something, then he cannot come out, then Hamlet comes and stabs him and he's like off, and he's dead. So when this particular scene comes to a closure, what happens is Polonius stands up and he walks in. Sometimes, because it is also played by comical characters, Polonius wakes up and does some gestures to the crowd. He makes them laugh, maybe a little bit of a dancing, and he walks off. Here, what Johnson later called to be willing suspension of disbelief takes place. The audience recognized that the one who exited the stage was not Polonius the character, but the actor who played the role of Polonius. He walked off so as to permit the next scene happen. So what happens in the next scene? They're dying together, Hamlet, Claudius, and Gertrude, and Claudius says that Polonius is not to be seen anywhere, and Hamlet responds that he is where he is eaten. And then he goes on to make philosophical lines on maggots, 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 and one lean beggar eats, the worm eating the beggar, being eaten by the fish, which is being eaten by the beggar, eaten by the king. So he goes on to that philosophical analogy. So nonetheless, there was no drop curtain. Women were not there on stage. There was no movable scenery. The characters came on stage and announced that it's night, or it's day, it's early morning, and the audience believed. And talking about Polonius being murdered on stage, it was also a walking away from the conventions. Remember, in Greek theater, violence never happened on stage. They happened off stage and they were reported on stage. So, yeah, that's it about the theatrical conventions of Elizabethan England.
Shakespeare and controversies go hand in hand. His critics have figured out more than what he would have even intended. Now let's see what Anand sir has to say on that.
Shakespeare and controversies go hand in hand, thanks to his critics. So ever since time immemorial, there have been critics who have read and interpreted Shakespeare in various ways, and we've got a rally of charges against Shakespeare. Equally, we also have a lot of admirers for the bard. Talking about the critics, one of the most popular and most, charges that we come across is that his plays are misogynistic in nature. We all agree that Shakespeare has contributed a lot of wonderful female characters, whether it be Portia, or whether it be Lady Macbeth, or whether it is Juliet, or Cleopatra, or Portia, or Ophelia, or Gertrude, but then certain dialogues, the way they are portrayed, have always come under this canon. Take, for instance, Hamlet's accusation on Gertrude as "Frailty, thy name is woman." It is seen as a contempt to womanhood. But then, as we all know, Shakespeare never wrote his plays expecting that his plays would have a literary merit centuries later, and he would be seen as a canonical stalwart and studied and cursed by students and teachers of English literature alike. Jokes apart, Shakespeare's plays contains the misogynistic elements primarily because he wrote plays with the sole purpose of minting money. Yeah, he wrote plays to become rich. He wrote plays to make money. As you may know, he was one of the first among the rank of authors to have become rich by pursuing writing alone. Hence, the main source of revenue in the globe was from the pit. The pit included the commoners, the daily laborers, who went for a whole day's work, maybe had some drinks, and they came tired to the play watching scenario. And when they watch theater, they look for some sort of a catharsis. And this happens when, in a comic relief moment or something in the play, a character comes in and abuses a lady, maybe uses some swear words, then they are like, yeah, give him one more, give her one more. And that's when the play going or the play watching experiences becomes fruitful. And this encouraged Shakespeare to include such instances aplenty. Speaking about further charges, another popular one is the accusation of Oedipus complex, especially in Hamlet. Most of our learners have the misconception that it is Sir Sigmund Freud who accuses Hamlet of having an Oedipus complex towards Gertrude, which is not true. In fact, it is the person called Ernest Jones, Jones, who is also a friend of Sigmund Freud, by the way, who coined this term, or who coined this argument that Hamlet has an Oedipal urge towards Gertrude in his work titled Hamlet and Oedipus. Yeah, you heard it right, not Hamlet and his Problems. That is a work by T.S. Eliot a few years before 1949 happened. T.S. Eliot refers to a specific thing called objective correlative, which Hamlet lacks in the work. He accuses this in his work, Hamlet and His Problems. So what is an objective correlative? A dominant unifying objective that binds the play or unifies the play throughout. Does Hamlet lack objective correlative? Well, most of us would agree to it. But then if you go back to, say for instance, the gravedigger scene and start reading Hamlet from that scene, then you may beg to differ with Eliot. Because the gravedigger scene brings forward, especially Yorick's skull image, which forms the cover page of most of the Hamlet works, becomes an extended metaphor which binds that play throughout. That of ephemerality of our life, the futility of our life. So, in that sense, if you read it from the gravedigger scene, the objective correlative is not actually found wanting in Hamlet. Going back to Ernest Jones, he is the one who accused that Hamlet has an Oedipal urge towards his mother. There are also plenty of other critics like Wilson Knight, who in his The Wheels of Fire accuses that Claudius is not actually a weak king as we claim. In fact, Claudius saves Denmark from a fragile king who is King Hamlet. There are also other critics who go bang, bang, bang on on Shakespeare. Another one that I remember is George Bernard Shaw. In a Shakespearean conference in 20th century, George Bernard Shaw graces the stage and he says, "I am taller than Shakespeare because I sit in his shoulders." In most of his plays, there are satiric dialogues that are aimed at Shakespeare. There is one play where a character speaks to another character and counters Shakespeare's notion of Sweet 16. Shaw's character puts forward a rational query. One character asks another character when he says that his lady love is in her sweet 16s and a lovely fair lady. The character repartees by saying, "Do you eat 16? How do you know that it is sweet?" So there are plenty of critics rallying behind Shakespeare. So if you ask me, there are critics, yes, the critics have made us read Shakespeare deeper. Of course, there are also people who have praised Shakespeare across the ages. Let's go back to Dr. Johnson. Until he came with Preface to Shakespeare, which is somewhat a balanced approach to Shakespeare, people only sung praises of Shakespeare. Later, again, in 1630, John Milton wrote a 14-line poem titled On Shakespeare. Then in 1840s comes Matthew Arnold, who writes a poem titled Shakespeare, which begins by these popular lines, others abide the question, thou art stand still. Right? Everybody are throwing arrows at you, they are posing questions on your literary merit, on your genius, on your talent, but thou, William Shakespeare, stand still and smile. In fact, no doubt that's the best remedy to criticism. Just stand and smile and shrug them aside and go on doing your work. But then, metaphorically, he implies that Shakespeare is dead and he's photographed and he's smiling in a portrait photograph. We still, most of the critics come posthumously, including Wilson Knight or A.C. Bradley or T.S. Eliot or Ernest Jones, and they fling arrows at Shakespeare, we are all eager to know his answer. But Shakespeare can only smile in a portrait because he's dead. He's no more.
So far, so good. We have covered almost all aspects of Shakespeare, the playwright. Now, let us see his merit as a poet, specifically as a sonneteer. Well, not only a description awaits you, but also recitals of a few sonnets. Exciting, isn't it?
Now, let's explore William Shakespeare, the sonneteer. But before I attempt to do that, allow me a few digressions. I mean it, a few digressions. Because to dive deep directly into the bard won't be sufficient enough without knowing the evolution of the sonnet as a poetic form. As you are aware of, sonnets emerged as a poetic form way back in Italy. Petrarch, who is regarded as the father of humanism, is also known as the father of sonnets. It came to England through Thomas Wyatt and Surrey, the Earl of Surrey, who is also known as Henry Howard, through the Tortoise Miscellany. Later, Philip Sidney's Astrophel and Stella followed. In 1591, it was published posthumously as well by Thomas Newman. In 1595, Edward Spencer's Amorety was published by Ponsonby, William Ponsonby, Ponsby. If you look at the structure of the sonnet, Petrarch had experimented with the 8/6 stanza forms, popularly known as octave and sestet. This form was retained by Wyatt and Surrey, and also by Sir Philip Sidney. Philip Sidney, while writing Astrophel and Stella, continued this octave sestet format, and within the sonnet sequence, he tried 5 Petrarchian varieties. Again, speaking about the uniqueness of the sonnet form that came to England, we must mention that the Petrarchian form was not experimented much with until it reached Shakespeare. This is a popular misconception because we believe that it's Shakespeare who invented or tried to flaunt with the 8/6 format, which is not true. But before discussing who took the decisive step to play with this 8/6 stanza form, let me just pause for a moment and get started with Astrophel and Stella by Sir Philip Sidney. Astrophel and Stella is a sonnet sequence that contains 108 sonnets and 11 songs by Philip Sidney. It derives from 2 Greek words, aster and phil, and the Latin word stella, meaning star. That is, Astrophel denotes the star lover, and Stella is the star. Let's have a quick glance to the second sonnet in the sequence. Quite an interesting one of my favorites. It goes like this. Not at the first sight, nor with a drift shot, love gave the wound, which, while I breathe, will bleed. But no worth did in mine of time proceed, till by degrees it had full conquest got. I saw and liked. I liked, but loved not. I loved, but straight did not what love decreed. At length, to love's decrees, I forced agreed. Yet, with repining at so partial lot, now even that footstep of lost liberty is gone.
Now, even that footstep of lost liberty is gone. And now, like slave-born Muscovite, I call it praise to suffer tyranny. I call it praise to suffer tyranny. And now employ the remnant of my wit to make myself believe that all is well. All is well. Why, with a feeling skill, I paint my hell. I paint my hell. Astrophil and Stella. So, as mentioned before, the Petrarchan form was meagerly imitated by the early sonneteers of England, including Wyatt, Surrey, and Sir Philip Sidney. But then came a man who wrote poems after poems for his to-be betrothed, which also contains the epithalamion and the prothalamion. He wrote a sonnet sequence titled Amoretti, which means little love or little Cupid. In that sonnet sequence, there is a wonderful poem titled One Day I Wrote Her Name. It is a classic example of how the Petrarchan sonnet design gets broken. Well, needless to say, the name of the poet is Spenser, Edmund Spenser. So what does Spenser do? He breaks the Petrarchan structure of 8-8-6. I forgot to mention the other title, octave and sestet. 8-6, I'm sorry, octave and sestet. He breaks this 8-6 structure into 6-6-2. That is, the octave is sidelined, sestet takes center stage. So 2 sestets and, let me hear that word. That's the word that many falsely ascribe to the bard. He did not invent it, but he wrote perfectly. It was invented by Edmund Spenser. It's Spenser who invented the closing couplet. So in Spenser, the structure is 6-6-2. 2 sestets and a couplet. So allow me to read Amoretti. One day I wrote her name. One day I wrote her name upon the strand. But came the waves and washed it away. Again I wrote with a second hand. But came the tide and made my pains his prey. Vain man, said she, that dost in vain assay a mortal thing so to immortalize. For I myself shall like to this decay, and eke my name be wiped out likewise. Not so, quoth I. Let baser things devise to die in dust, but you shall live by fame. My verse your virtues rare shall etonize, and in the heavens write your glorious name. Where, when as death shall all the world subdue, our love shall live, and later life renew. The closing couplet. Where, whereas death shall all the world subdue, our love shall live, and later life renew. In simple terms, Spenser is engaged in a conversation with her fiancé. He says that I'm writing your names on the strands, but then the waves come and wash it away. And the lady teases him saying, your love is taken by water. And then Spenser becomes so romantically lunatic and becomes passionate and claims that water can wash our love away, but not my lines. That would immortalize my love for you. That would immortalize and write your name in the annals of history. Amoretti, little love, he says. My digressions, you know, right? Pardon me. Now let's come back to our beloved bard and his life as a sonneteer. It seems that William Shakespeare wrote his sonnets primarily with the purpose of only private circulation. The bard, unlike his plays, which were public or which were in the public domain, did not really want or like the sonnets to be published. But nonetheless, got published, the first instance that we all know being the 1609's quarto edition, we know that the structure of the sonnet in particular and also the sequencing of the sonnet broke the stereotypes prevalent up until then. When I say stereotypes, all these sonnets that we've discussed so far, beginning from Petrarch to Edmund Spenser, were all sonnet sequences, which means hundreds of love poems written for one beloved, a single lady. But within the very beginnings of the sonnet sequence, we could see that Shakespeare breaks it. By the way, how many sonnets has Shakespeare written? 154? Well, as a matter of fact, you are right, but then Willie has written 160 sonnets. The 6 that I am talking about, which does not feature in your account, appears in 3 of his plays: Romeo and Juliet, Henry V, and Love's Labour's Lost. 154 plus 6. Coming back to the construction, the first 126 poems or sonnets are addressed to one Mr. W.H., who is probably his patron, William Herbert. William Herbert was much more popular during those times as the nephew of Sir Philip Sidney, and perhaps the only legal heir to Sir Philip Sidney. They were thick friends. There are deep-lying undertones to homosexual relationship between them, not proven, but nonetheless, the first 126 sonnets are addressed to William Herbert or W.H. The remaining 28 is addressed to a dark lady. At this moment, I'd like to pause and remind you that the word dark lady does not signify to her skin complexion per se. That could either mean her eye color, as in dark or black, or it could mean the color of her hair, as in black. Mind you, the Westerners in particular have blonde hair, brunettes. Yeah? No, not the one that you're thinking, that you're used to. No, not that. But then hair as in blonde, brunette, and similarly dark hair. So probably the dark lady of the sonnets had the dark black hair. So right in the construction he deviates from the Petrarchan form. And even within this 126-28 division, you could see a triangular relationship forming or formulating. In the first 126 poems, we see that Shakespeare presents his affection towards his patron, W.H., which ranges in varied dimensions. We could see him getting possessive about W.H.'s interest or increasing interest towards another rival poet of Shakespeare. Shakespeare is like a coy lady. No, I'm not meaning misogyny, but then like a coy lady. He is like, yeah? मैं हूं ना, क्यों किसी और को आप तारीफ कर रहे हो? I'm here. Can't I write good poems for you? Look at me. I'm here, is what he says. When it comes to the second half, the last 28 sonnets with Dark Lady being featured, again, the love is divided. W.H. develops an infatuation towards the Dark Lady, and Shakespeare is again torn between these two. So the triangle formation continues. Again, talking about Shakespearean sonnet structure, as we have already seen the evolution, Shakespeare braves to deviate entirely from the sonnet structure formulated by Petrarch. The octave sestet format, already divided into 2 sestets and a couplet by Spenser, excited Shakespeare. So he further subdivided that structure into 3 stanzas consisting 4 lines each, concluded by a couplet, which is again called as 3 quatrains and a couplet, a concluding couplet. But with Shakespeare, the concluding couplet derives a bit more significance because those two lines ends with a punch, and because it ends with a punch, it started to get popular, or it started gaining currency, and hence Shakespeare's closing lines are also equally popular. Again, another point that we must note is these sonnets did not really have a title, sonnet sequences. So they are known by their sonnet number. Sonnet number 8, sonnet number 16, sonnet number 30, sonnet number 116. This is how they came to be known by. Or probably in your study materials, in your textbooks, it might have received the first line of the sonnet. Let me not to the marriage of two minds, or on a summer day. So this could probably be a way in which it was titled. But nonetheless, Shakespeare's sonnets did not bear any titles. They took the number. Sonnet 1 to sonnet 154. Now, let's spend some time reflecting through or reading through a few of those sonnets which are worth aesthetically listening to and enjoying. Alright then, shall we read through a few of his sonnets? Well, I'm not going to read line by line all those sonnets. I'll mention a few, I'll read a few lines from here and there, and as and when an entire reading is required, I'll attend them as well. So which one shall we begin with? Well, you may be familiar with sonnet number 18. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? How? Well, if you learned it during your bachelor's, that is your undergraduate, your UG days, you would have learned this poem as a commemoration of friendship, a toast to friendship. Conversely, if you had learned it during your master's, then the same poem, Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer's Day, would have been taught to you as a toast to homosexuality. Nonetheless, I'm not touching that. But one thing that I would like to read from 18 is a striking resemblance with sonnet number 81 as well. The same to be seen with Edmund Spenser's One Day He Wrote Her Name, the closing couplets if you remember. Yeah? So here also the last two lines of sonnet number 18 goes like this. When in eternal lines to time thou growest, so long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. This what? My lines, my poetry, my sonnet for you. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and so long gives life to you. Look at sonnet number 81. 81 again is, his poems of course concern a lot of themes like love, possessiveness, the weariness of time, depression, possessiveness, and a lot of things. So sonnet number 81 also speaks about commemorating his love. So, or I shall love your epitaph to make, or you survive when in earth and rotten. Goes on like that, when the closing couplet is like this. You still shall live, such virtue has my pen, when breed most breeds, even in the mouths of men. Fascinating, right? Now let's go back to another interesting sonnet. Maybe sonnet number 40. Again, it's about the weariness of time, the fear of losing his lover. A full read. Take all my loves, my love, yet take them all. What hast thou then more than thou hadst before? No love, my love, that thou mayst true love call. All mine was thine before thou hadst this woe. Then, if for my love thou my love received, I cannot blame thee for my love thou used, but yet be blamed if thou the self-deceived, by willful taste of what thyself refuse. I do forgive thy robbery, gentle thief. Look at the oxymoron there. I do forgive for stealing my heart, sweetheart, gentle thief. Although thou steal thee all my poverty, and yet love knows it is a greater grief to bear love's wrong that hates no injury. Now look at the closing couplet. Lascivious grace, in whom all ill will shows, kill me with spites, yet we must not be foes. Kill me with hatred, but be not my enemy. Don't be my foe. Look how Shakespeare is alright. Moving on. Again, sonnet number 64 speaks about the rampages of time. It begins thus. When I have seen my times fell and defaced, blah blah blah, and the closing couplet. This thought is as a debt which cannot choose but weep to have that which it fears to lose. This thought is as debt which cannot choose but weep to have that which it fears to lose. മരണത്തെക്കാൾ വലിയ മരണമാണ് നഷ്ടപ്പാടിന്റെ വേർപാടിനെ കുറിച്ചുള്ള ആകുലത. Shakespeare, the sonneteer. It's not over yet. The masterpieces are coming. Sonnet 96, supporting this patron. Some say thy fault is youth, some wantonness. Some say the grace is youth and gentle spot, blah blah blah, closing couplet. But do not so, I love thee in such sort, as thou being mine is thy good wrapper. I love you. What else do you need? मैं आपसे मोहब्बत करता हूँ. आपको और क्या चाहिए? ज्ञान निन्ने प्रेमिക്കുന്നു. इधे കൂടുതൽ നിനക്ക് എന്താണ് വേണ്ടത്? ഞാൻ ഇല്ലേ നിനക്ക് വേണ്ടി. ഇട്ടിട്ട് പോടേ. Shakespeare free. Possessiveness free. Unbound love free. Platonic was a trend back then. Now, very quickly, before going to recite another sonnet, a popular sonnet that you are all familiar with, I would like to add one more feature of Shakespearean sonnets. I would like to call Shakespearean sonnets monologue in poetry or monologue in verse. Because if you take any of these sonnets, they are literally Shakespearean outcries, Shakespearean soliloquies, Shakespearean monologues. Go back and read. One more distinction to make before I go to read or recite this one last sonnet. You know, poetry consists of stanzas, not paragraphs. So it is futile to talk about sentences. Is there sentence in poetry? You may say no. But then, what is a sentence marker? I would say three. Which are they? The sentence markers? A full stop, a question mark, or the one that's there in your face right now, an exclamation mark. ആശ്ചര്യ ചിഹ്നം. ശരിയാണല്ലോ. അപ്പോൾ കവിതയ്ക്ക് full stop sentence കൊടുക്കുന്നത്. Full stop, question mark, exclamation mark. Go back to these sonnets and count how many sentences are there. There are sonnets where there is only a single sentence. There are sonnets where there are 6 to 7 sentences. But this is one of the best. And again, during your bachelor's, if you had learned this poem, it would be a celebration of something. In your master's, this would again be a celebration of something else. And despite being in masters, there are people who don't recognize this poem as a celebration of homosexual love. Let's go back. You guessed it right. Sonnet number 116. What's the title? Let me not to the marriage of true minds. Let me not to the marriage of true minds. One last read and it's done. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Oh no, it is an ever fixed mark that looks on tempest and is never shaken. It is the star to every wandering bark, whose words are known, although his height be taken. Love's not time's fool, though rosy lips and cheeks, within the bending sickle's compass come. Love alters not with his brief hours and weeks, but bears it out even to the edge of doom. Chanduvinne തോൽപ്പിക്കാനാവില്ല മക്കളെ. True love can never be defeated. How many sentences? 4 sentences. I'll give you one recital of the 4 sentences. Sentence number 1. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love, which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Sentence number 2. Oh no, it is a never fixed mark that looks on tempest and is never shaken. It is the star to every wandering bark, whose words are known, although his height be taken. Sentence number 3. Love's not time's fool, though rosy lips and cheeks within his bending sickle's compass calm. Love alters not with his brief hours and weeks, but bears it out even to the edge of doom. Sentence number 4, the closing couplet. Before that, what does these 3 sentences prove? Love is not this, love is not that. True love is this, true love cannot be that. Now the closing couplet. If this be error, and upon me proved, I never wit, nor no man ever loved. Imagine a courtroom drama. You are summoned in front of a judge. You are standing in that Rubakud, or whatever you call that, and you take the pledge. Satyamallade verondum bodhikilla, I shall only speak truth. So let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love, dash, dash, dash. Remember, Elizabethan England was a Presbyterian England. William Shakespeare was a Catholic. Catholics had a lot of disadvantages, including public communion, public prayers. They had to pay taxes. Along with all this, homosexuality was a crime back then. We know Christopher Marlowe charged as a homosexual. Remember his play, Widow of Carthage. Now come to William Shakespeare. Maybe on the wildest of the fancies, imagine Shakespeare as Marlowe in disguise. Arrested and treasoned for homosexuality. Stands in the court. Says, let me not to the marriage of true minds, your silly, stupid, monotonous true love. A girl loving a guy, courting a lady, let me not to that marriage. Maybe he's with WH in a court. Let me not to that marriage. Love is not love when it faces problem and turns its face away, or when it is shaken and it withers away, or time affects, we get aged and we walk away. That's not love. That's not true love. True love knows no boundaries. Not age, not gender, nothing. Not even obstacles, not family. True love knows no boundaries, no limits. If this be proved wrong, if this be error, and upon me proved, upon me, who's popular as a playwright, 37 plays to my credit, upon me proved, I never wit. Frustrated, I never wit. Nor no man ever loved. എന്റെ പ്രണയത്തെയാണോ നീ ചോദ്യം ചെയ്യുന്നത്? If this be proved wrong, if you say my love is not true, look at the former sonnets, the sort of love, unconditional love that I show. If you say that to to be challenged. I've never read. What I've read is shit I've never read. And no man should ever claim to have loved. No man ever loved. Let me not to the marriage of two minds any picker form of sexuality. Period.
Well, thank you, Freddie. Now let's move to the last part. Abracadabra, hocus pocus. The face and the man that you were looking forward to is finally here. Though sound spectral, this is the man, or perhaps a piece of that man, and not a spectre. Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for your patient listening. Do not go away, because we are not done yet. Yes, we are nearing our scheduled time, but we are not done yet. Please do not go away. Please stay patient. There are a few things I'd like to add to whatever was missing in this list so far. I would just like to wind them up and then leave the floor open for your comments and queries, and then we'll call it a day. All right? Just give me 5 minutes. Starting from the beginning. Difference between soliloquy and aside. We've been trying to discuss this for the last 4 or 5 sessions, I suppose, and somehow it gets lost. So soliloquy and aside, speaking about monologue, Atmagatam, right? When it is used in poems, as introduced by Alfred Tennyson, then perfected by Robert Browning, it is called dramatic monologue. But are dramatic monologues dependable? Again, has a huge question mark over it, because it just portrays a monotonous perspective. Take the classic example of Andrea del Sarto by Robert Browning. In Andrea del Sarto, Andrea, one of the best painters ever, who was even compared with Michelangelo, is now a nobody. Why? Because he married his lady love, and Lucrezia is cheating on him. And as he's trying to draw a portrait of her so that he can sell that and pay for her extravagant lifestyle, they could hear her cousin means Jaran, the illicit relationship guy, whistling from outside. And Lucrezia is quite impatient. She's looking outside, and at the extreme of pathos, Andrea says, "Darling, please be patient for a while. Let me just complete this portrait so that I can pay for your extravagances." Well, from a misogynistic perspective, we can stand back and say, she is a bitch. But then, mind you, we never get to know about Lucrezia's perspective. Maybe Andrea really is a terrible painter. Maybe he's imbecile. Maybe he's impotent. Maybe he's a rude husband. He doesn't know how to express love. We never know. Maybe Lucrezia is not monogamous. We never know. So these are some drawbacks with dramatic monologue. Coming back to soliloquy and aside, simply briefing it. Soliloquy means after the scene somewhat comes to an end, the character alone is on stage, and the character's mind is tumultuous. He or she has to think about a lot of problems that they are going through. So they think aloud so that the audience can hear or overhear them. So that's why Hamlet says, to be or not to be, that is the question. Because I've come back to Denmark, I lost my dad, and the first sight that I see is my mom sitting on my uncle's lap, laughing. Even Niobe would have grieved long, but my mom is laughing all the way from Wittenberg, from Germany, while I was in the ship. That's where the play begins, not on the grave, the watchman scene, mind you. So all over my transit, I was wondering what would my mother do alone? She's so fragile, even if she wants to weep. Who's there to lend her a shoulder? I'm the only son. And then when I go, my father, my hero, is no more. Will my little shoes fit that throne? And then the first scene that he sees is his uncle sitting and his mother on his lap. And the uncle says, "I, Hamlet, what brings you here? Why are you clothed in black?" Right? Hamlet is confused, frustrated, furious. Imagine yourself as a teenager. And then your best friend comes and says, "The ghost wants to meet you." Would you go? But Hamlet goes, and he's like, "Oh, Papa, I never thought I'll meet you again." And he listens to it. And that becomes a burden. Imagine you being gifted a gun by your father's ghost and say that, you will tremble, you will shake. That accounts for Hamlet's procrastination. He simply cannot pull that trigger. He simply cannot stab. And when he gets an opportunity while Claudius is praying, he simply cannot do that because he'll go to heaven. That accounts for most of his soliloquies. He's troubled, confused. He doesn't know what to do. He's immature. He's young, but he's a scholar. So he says that aloud so that the audience can overhear what he's going through. Maybe to tell them that he's pretending to be mad. He's not actually mad. It's the antic disposition. Meanwhile, aside means there are characters on stage. And when characters are on stage, if I have to think and think aloud, then like Coleridge said, like he said, the willing suspension of disbelief has to be brought in. The audience should realize that the characters do not overhear that. The character is talking aloud so that we can hear. That's called an aside. There are characters on stage. Take the case of Julius Caesar. The conspirators come to meet Caesar. He knows that they'll stab him one day. But then they all laugh and talk to him like, Caesar, you are the, the golden king or emperor of Rome. And he's like, just like Judas said, like Yeshu said, Jesus said, Judas that's an aside. There are people on stage and he's yelling out loud so that the audience can hear. Vainglorious bastards, I know what you are going to do. That's the difference between soliloquy and aside. Due to the want of time, I don't think I have time to explain a lot more. There are a few things I missed out. I'd like to speak about a couple of things. One is anachronism. Anachronism means, the classic case being, there was a stage show by Amma, the MMA Federation. They replayed the Chemmin story on stage. And Mammootty, who was playing Perikutti, was wearing a Rado watch. It's not only about the logic that a fisherman won't wear a Rado watch, but during the times in which that story was written, that watch did not exist. So there are plenty of such instances that comes in Shakespeare or other fellow playwrights where anachronism looms large, either to entertain the audience or maybe by sheer ignorance and mistake or carelessness. Another thing I would like to quickly touch upon is a process called stichomythia. S-T-I-C-H-O-M-Y-T-H-I, stichomythia. It is an interchange of single lines which constitutes a sense of repartees. Urla kuperi, as we say in Malayalam. Due to the want of time, I'll just read again a single passage between Hamlet and Gertrude from Hamlet. Hamlet. Now, mother, what's the matter? Apollonius arrests Queen. He's there to meet his mother. Now, mother, what's the matter? Queen. Hamlet, thou hast thy father much offended. The reference is to Claudius, not King Hamlet. Hamlet, mother, you have my father much offended. King Hamlet. Queen, come, you answer with an idle tongue, a wicked tongue. You should not speak about it. Hamlet. So what does Queen say? Come. You answer with an evil tongue. Hamlet. Go. You question with a wicked tongue. Queen. Why? How now, Hamlet? Hamlet. What's the matter now? Queen. How? Have you forgot me? Hamlet. No. By the road, not so. You are the queen and your husband's brother's wife. You are the queen and your husband's brother's wife. Well, this is again from A Literary Salad by Dr. Madhukar Rao, an amazing book that's available in Amazon if you want to read. Unfortunately, Dr. Rao is no more with us. I'm really fortunate, just like Freddie said a little while ago, I'm really fortunate that I've been into these people's classes, Dr. Madhukar Rao, Dr. V.C. Harris, quite a lot of them. COVID has been taking a lot of them. That's most sad as well. But then we have a lot of luminaries. That's why in AK Creations Academy, I try to bring in all my teachers so that I could pass on the entire wisdom and experience they have with you. As you know, Dr. Rangarajan was supposed to take this session today. He's here with us, listening to me patiently. I would definitely like to reserve for his comments. Dr. Lalita Matthew is here. Lalama is like, we both share that passion for literature. She's someone who actually was instrumental, along with Dr. Rangarajan, in me completing my post-graduation. Given a lot of my circumstances, I would have never completed it. And it was she and her who have urged me to do that. And we also have Kaimal Marsh. Kaimal Marsh is also an expert in Shakespearean studies. He did his doctorate in Thomas Hardy's fiction. So we have these dignitaries. I would like to listen to them, and I am also open for your queries. Don't go away, because at the end of this, I have a few more announcements to make which may excite you. But for the time being, over to the dignitaries for their reserved comments, and I'd leave the floor open after that. Lalama?
Yes, Anand. My
I'm really
thanks.
honored. I'm
My
really honored that
thanks.
you were here for the 90 minutes.
My thanks and also my blessings. Now, my dear friends, respected teachers, masters, all over here, we are all here as well-wishers for Anand Krishnamurti, who is a gem and who is definitely a maestro now itself, but what heights he is going to go, I am not, he's going to reach, I just can't say. I'm Dr. Lalitha. I'm a visiting professor and a member of Board of Studies in Cochin University. And in fact, Anand wants me to join you one of these days as your faculty. But then I'll definitely try to. As of now, it is because he's so fond of me and vice versa.
I want you to pass all that experience and wisdom to my learners. It's not about my selfishness. Yes, I can again listen to you. That's a selfishness, I agree. But then I
Okay.
want all that
That is
age-old
not
experience.
selfishness, that is pure selflessness.
Yeah.
So, from whatever source you are amassing the knowledge, through you or through that person itself, you want to propagate to the world. That is the highest quality a teacher can have. See, we academicians, we are not all that lucky to get much money like IT people and great officials or maestros in their own companies and industries, but we are the richest because Vidyadhanam Sarvadhanal Pradhanam. What little we know or what much we know, we are giving to young minds like yours, sowing the seeds of the urge to information. More than information, the urge to information is important. So there is a vast difference between knowledge and education. About that, I'll be talking to you later. This is only, I am talking to you from a hospital bed. I am admitted to in the COVID ward of Ernakulam Medical Center. I'm talking to you from the hospital room.
We wish you a speedy recovery, Lalama. We
And
wish
I
you a
kept
speedy
the
recovery.
microphone off because I didn't want you all to hear my coughing incessantly. Thank God for this past 1.5 minutes, I have not coughed. That also is God's doing. And my dear youngsters, wherever you are, please do not miss PK Academy's programs, because it is going to be that good for you. Whatever is your motive, whatever is your aspiration, let all that and much more come true. And my great blessings to my dearest foster son Anand. I had an Anand, my only son. He passed away in a bike accident, but so what? God gave me,
And my mother also bears your name. She
yes,
is also known
God
as.
gave me another Anand, and that's that. God bless you.
Thank you, Lalama, for those kind words. And we all really wish you a speedy recovery so that you can come back and engage with us. Kaimal sir, sorry, I skipped the queue and the protocol because she was so excited to talk. Kaimal sir. Kaimal sir, if your health is permitting to talk. Narayana Kaimal sir. Seems there is some technical issue over there. Rangarajan sir. Oh, I think Kaimal sir has come up. Just a second, sir. Kaimal sir. We are all ears. Kaimal sir.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Within a short span of time, you are able to touch all the aspects related to it, and within this limited time of 1.5 hours, it's not possible to talk like this, but you have done a great job, no? Really a great job. And I wish you all the best in your attempts, not only on Shakespearean studies, but also other authors whom you are interested in. Okay, all the best.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. It's really a blessing. We really feel great that you graced us throughout the session. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, thank you. You will be able to shine better than this in
With your
future.
blessings, definitely, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Rangarajan, sir.
Good evening, Anand. I think you are able to hear me.
Yes, sir.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Anand, actually, I moved in at 6:25, and then I had to leave because I had to do a swab test for my COVID, maybe determining whether it is positive or negative. So that's what I was doing. At the same time, I was listening to you, and as Kaimal sir has said, you were able to cover most of the important aspects, especially related to the possible questions that can appear for the net, like the flat characters, round characters, and things like that. These are some of the areas which students might require some intimate kind of attention.
I still
So
remember I learned them from you, sir. Way back when I was in Maharajas, I used to come to your home and you used to take all these things, you used to brief all these things to me in a
yeah,
very
yeah, yeah,
simple
yeah.
manner. It owes to you.
Anyway, so I would say that I'm really amazed the way in which you were able to organize that, and that too, you were able to, like a Shakespearean actor, you were able to change costumes, and you came in even motley, I would say that, and then you were able to talk about false stuff, and again. Only thing is, I was wondering how you missed Desdemona, although you mentioned so
Yes,
many other
yes.
women characters. So it was only a slip because when you got such a rush of ideas coming through you, then again you're likely to miss something. But generally, I think you were able to cover the main aspects of Shakespeare and the very positive aspects and of Shakespeare. And since you also acted, there were some students like Aishwarya and Freddie who are very genuine and who helped you in actually accomplishing those parts which you played. So that one, that I must say is very unique. So those students who are attending our class, they are very very lucky. I would say generally, the kind of net coaching that happens, it does not cover so much of a visual element there. You were able to lend a lot of visual elements there so that the students are able to remember what exactly you're trying to talk about, especially when you're talking about soliloquy and maybe aside and then monologues and dramatic monologues, things like that. These are things which and again, at some points, I think when you were so much rushed, you spoke about the willing suspension of disbelief. That part I heard. I wonder whether it is said by Dr. Johnson. I think
Coleridge, sir. Coleridge.
it is by Coleridge. But I
Coleridge.
think
Yes,
you
sir.
said
Yes, sir.
Johnson, I think, yeah.
Yes, sir.
The
But then I
willing
corrected it in the
suspension
chat
of
box. Yes, sir.
disbelief
Coleridge.
that constitutes poetic faith.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And again, you could also even have tried acting out Caliban. Okay,
Yes,
you
sir.
taught me a language and then
We
how
wanted to,
he,
sir. We wanted to. We wanted to.
yeah.
We really wanted to.
No, no, of course. See, so many things. And I think finally you also spoke about the sonnet aspects of Shakespeare also. Maybe you spoke about the Dark Lady of Sonnets. I do not know whether he did that
Yes, sir. I
because
did.
I remember seeing a lot of articles on these Shakespearean sonnets. In fact, the main, I have read a lot by Dowden, then again A.L. Rouse, and also G.B. Harrison. So it was just like taking a walk through. When it came to describing the Globe Theatre and the Blackfriars Theatre and things like that, there's a walkthrough element which I was able to experience listening to you. So in fact, it was very, very refreshing, and I'm sure that the students are going to immensely benefit by whatever you shared with them, and especially from the net aspirant point of view. That is very important because they'll ask you only small questions. There may be one-word answers and things like that. So instead of actually rambling into a lecture, there should be so many things, minor things, which you should be able to cover so that they are able to. Maybe you could have also spoken about Bowdlerization or how to read Shakespeare without causing embarrassment to the family.
To
Okay, Captain
understand
Bowdler,
classics.
yeah, you know that you know that the expurgated editions of Shakespeare, where a lot of obscene things were happening in Shakespearean plays, and then things were actually taken away from that. You call them Bowdlerize. Bowdlerize is one term which you could have used. And again, the difference between Shakespearean sonnet, the Petrarchan and the Spenserian sonnets, and again the longer poems by Shakespeare. And again, when you speak about the unrhymed iambic pentameter, that's a blank verse.
Blank
You should
verse.
have spoken about the unrhymed iambic pentameter which Shakespeare used, then which actually lends quality to Shakespearean language.
Yes.
Then again,
Soliloquies and
how Shakespeare
particulars.
language can be used for IC analysis and things like that. The pun and the quibbles. I do not know. Maybe you already said that. Did you say anything about the puns in Shakespeare and the quibbles in Shakespeare?
I spoke a little bit, sir. I spoke a little bit.
Yeah, because that is very, very important because the quibbles and how the Shakespeare is so fascinated with words and word formation. And so many quotes are there about Shakespeare, and some of them are wrongly acknowledged also. So I think most of the things you were able to cover, especially frailty, thy name is woman. And again, at one point, Shakespeare even says that women being the weaker vessels, that is also a misogynistic statement that Shakespeare made. Anyway, I don't want to rob into your time and steal your thunder by actually invading into the time of the students. I'm sure that the best recipients are the students, and they are going to be rewarded by your exercise. And again, the announcement that you have made by offering them this course at a very, very nominal price, I think there will be a great rush when you actually announce the next course. So I wish you all the best, Anand, as I have always done. You have got my good wishes. See, people like Madam Lilitha and all. So they are actually full of appreciation only for you, and how they have taken you as she has taken you as her own son, which means then we are only happy that you are able to actually have more wings and more feathers in your cap. So these are things which actually make us also very proud, and nobody is competing with you. We want you to do very well. And I'm sure that in a government college, you must be able to get a very good position. That's what Professor Lalita and Kaimal sir and all the senior teachers who have been moving around with you, and Dr. Rajesh from Tevara College. They are all people who have recognized the spark in you. I have seen you as a very raw student, and
And you have molded
who
me, sir. You have molded me at every
absolutely
single
not.
stage.
There's no question of molding. Do not even use the word mold. Mold means you are in the fixed pattern.
Yeah.
You are not molded.
See, you have a
You
lot of
keep on-
raw material. You have a lot
Yes.
of raw material which we have
Exactly.
polished a few fine rough edges. That's all.
Yeah. So molding does not come there at all because you are not in a straight jacket. You keep on evolving. The moment you are evolving, it means that you are not molded. Molded means you are actually shrunk and then you are in a straight jacket. It is not so. So never use the word mold when you talk about teaching. Never use the word when you say that I am molding my students. Never say that at all. Okay, that is very incorrect to say that because you keep on evolving. I know, as she said, you were a novice, you were a greenhorn, you were a tyro. All these are other words to say that you were very young, but you improved. You really put in a lot of efforts and you improved. And then again, you dare to speak about Shakespeare. And then that's wonderful. And I'm sure I wish all the students who participated in this, and especially I'm very, very appreciative of people like Freddie, whom I do not know at all, and Aishwarya, so who have been lending great support, who repose great faith in you. And then that's what. So similarly, Professor Lalita and I am, and Mr. Kaimal, we actually repose a lot of faith in you, and we want you to really blossom forth into a full-fledged professor of English. So with all my blessing, let me stop. Okay?
Thank
Bye-bye.
you so
Good
much.
luck.
Thank you so much for your kind words, sir. And before we let the floor open, just like sir said, I would like to mark my reverence to Freddie, Aishwarya. There were also two more, Anju and Jomi. They couldn't chip in because of the network issues. So I'd like to thank them for all the support. And the show took place on Friday evening, Friday and Saturday. It went till early morning in Saturday. The last sonnet sequence that you witnessed for the 20-25 minutes was taken at around 4-5 a.m. at my residence. And Freddie was literally dozing off and he was operating the camera. And words are inexplicable. There was also Ashwin and Freddie and Atul KP who played that strings when I was doing that soliloquy. Words of thanks must go to a lot of people. Dr. Sheena Kaimal, who have joined us, Sri Lakshmi Chechi, and a lot of people. Parvati Salil, who's a student and a great friend of mine, internationally reputed poetess from SOAS University, London. Quite a lot of them chipping in, apart from my learners, Pinky Anthony from ASAP, quite a lot of them. I'm deeply obliged to all of you. The floor is open if you have any queries or any comments. Don't go away because there are a couple of announcements pending as well, learners who are here. And
one word about Parvati. I'm so happy that Parvati attended it from London.
Yes,
Anyway,
time zones are different.
I keep following her poetry and things like that. I am so very, very happy that a girl from Ernakulam, from St. Teresa's, is actually creating waves in London also. And then I am so very happy. I met her father and mother. I remember her father was working in Sun Pharma. I met her at a poetry session, and I do not know whether Parvati remembers that. So again, Radha ma'am and also Priya, they're all appreciative. I have read your poems, and the first poem which appeared in the Indian Express, that was really amazing, and you never looked back, and you are not going to look back at all. So my good wishes. See, honestly, you got such a fan following, and actually Parvati has a lot of fan following also, including Rangarajan. Okay, so nice. Yeah, good. Yeah.
And how come all the listeners? Why don't they open up their visuals also? It will be more lively if all of you come on the camera.
You can actually take a picture, Anand.
Yes,
Let them all come live.
We'll do that towards the end. We'll do that at the end of the session.
We can take
You
pictures.
can take a picture. You can take a picture, a shot with all of them.
From teacher's point of view, what I say is when we take a class, we don't like to talk to an empty screen with some numbers and names. If there are people who are responding, see, even if you're not
here? Is Anthony here?
No, sir, he couldn't make it.
Always, this should be the case always, throughout. It is very encouraging and motivating for a faculty to talk to live people, live faces, isn't it? Just a humble request from me.
We have people like Agatha and then Purna. I'm so very happy. Narayana, okay. Sheena Kaimal, okay.
Till now, we couldn't see them.
I wish I could teach them all, okay. So I have left Maharajas long back. And then to find such enthusiastic faces like Agatha Christie, I remember, and Purna, wonderful to see your expression. Okay, and so many very good things I am able to see. Anand, I think you should continue to really inspire the next generation. And yes, I think now I am not overdo it. Okay, thank you very much. Divya, fine. Take a picture of all of them.
Sure, sir.
Take a picture of all of them. They are all very good. Actually, they are all genuine
Whoever is the
students.
participant, please come in the audio.
So it takes a couple
That's
of
a very
minutes for
good
them.
suggestion, ma'am. Lalita ma'am, it's a very good suggestion. They should all come up.
Here it's only a suggestion because it is Anand's class. But I teach in the university. I have 95 children for integrated MSc.
Okay.
I expect all of them to put on their audio video together. But some say they have a network issue, but the video is on, audio is not on. If the audio is on, video is not on. So I agree that I found out from experts such a problem can be there. So what I have done is to check whether they are putting the thing on and going to sleep or going to have a coffee or attending a telephone call. We never know. So every 5 minutes they have to show themselves without anything, without hearing. 1 minute every 5 or 10 minutes. That is the rule I have kept. But I can afford to because I am a staff there. But here it's different.
All right, let's give them a couple of minutes because they'll have to put the makeups on. That's why.
Oh, yeah, lipstick and all. It doesn't matter. All of you look extremely beautiful. Right?
In the meanwhile, the floor is open. If there are any queries or any comments, the floor is open. And in the meanwhile, maybe it's 7:56 now. In 58, we expect you to turn it on and let's have a selfie. Sure.
Yes, please. Questions?
Sheena ji, I'm really honored that you came and you sit there for the whole session. Dr. Sheena, for those who don't know her, is the present head Department of English in Sri Shankara Vidyapeetham College, Perumbavoor. And I'm really honored that she was here and listening to me throughout the session.
Anand, thank you, Anand, for introducing me. Thank you so much.
So the floor is open if
It was
anybody
a
has.
wonderful session, Anand. It was a very wonderful session.
Yes.
Thank you,
See,
sister.
all of us seniors feel the same. So it has to be the truth. Only thing is, even though Rangarajan sir was giving you a lot more suggestion about leaving things and all, within the packed time, you did your best. Sir is telling because sir wants you to expose more and more of
He
your
loves
ideas.
me that much, man. That's
Yeah,
it.
yeah. And maybe you have so many sessions left. It is after all your academy. You can fit it here and there anytime. Like,
Yes.
because literature, it's a vast ocean. You talk for the whole time, it won't be over.
Yeah, it is.
But lifetime won't be over.
We can only
Okay,
touch the tip of the
ma'am.
iceberg.
Glad to meet you. Please tell something. No, I was just requesting you to tell something about the class, motivating our young teacher. Okay, she has some net issues.
All right, so any queries from the students' side, or else we can go for the selfie? Freddie, I hope you're on with the screenshot thing. There are still quite a few blocks. I do respect in case you don't want to open up the cam, that's fine. I know there are people who are working from their domestic households, they have their family and other commitments, so that's totally fine. There are a few who had requested to do the same as well, so that's okay. But for those who would like to be a part of this picture,
typical female vanity, not female frailty, but with female vanity, let me tell you, since I'm in the hospital, I have no makeup kit with me.
but you look all the pretty all the way.
Oh.
Always.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to put up something on stage with both of us on stage.
Sure.
Something someday.
But I'm not going to play Gertrude for you.
I know.
Not Lady Macbeth. And I'm too old for Desdemona.
Sweet 60s, as they say.
Yeah.
All right, guys, if you can have your cams on, there are still quite a few. That's off. Ambali, Amrita, Dalmia, Vishnupriya, Shelly, Freddie, Rama ma'am, Nandini.
Now
Are you going to take a picture? Are you going to take a picture now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Anand, I'll pass the verdict.
Yes. Go ahead, because I think it is getting late.
No question.
Yes, sir.
They're
It is
so
a great opportunity
interested.
for all of you to feature with these legends. The living legends that these people are. It's a golden opportunity to get photographed with all of them. It's my pleasure that you could get such an opportunity. Freddie, come to the center, please. And tilt a little bit down, if you can.
I'm wearing it.
Of all the people, I don't want you to miss out. Your face is not visible, man. Yeah, that's fine. I don't want you to miss out. That's fine.
Nice face.
He's getting married this April, so that's going to start blushing more. All right, so thank you everyone for joining us today. Before you leave, I'd like to announce that we will be screening Dead Poets Society, the movie Dead Poets Society, on the Republic Day from 5 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. It's a free entry. There is no fee, nothing at all attached to it. I'll be sharing the meeting link to you. And I request all of you to join us on the Republic Day, the 26th of January, 2 days from here, for the viewing of Dead Poets Society, a wonderful movie that I believe every teaching aspirant must watch.
Anand,
all right,
sir,
then. Yes, please.
Can I take a minute?
No, I'm so sorry. Please go on. Please.
No, I just wanted to thank you for sharing the link and letting me to join in for today's class. And
Anytime.
As always, I'm cleared-minded. I took notes right from the start. And
I always want you to come and join us. I know that you recently also ranked the gender studies, post-graduation in gender studies. You have a double MA, triple MA. So you would always be happy to have you amidst us. Anytime.
Rangarajan sir, of course, I look up to you, and I really tried to call you on Messenger as well, but I couldn't reach you. I haven't forgotten you at all. Always ask Anand sir about you as well, and I can't wait to see you again. And It's an honor to have met all of you. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a lovely day.
Nice listening to you, Parvati, okay? And you make us all very proud by being a small chip from here making big waves there in the UK. That is not a mean joke. So that too with poetry, it is not easy, okay? Wonderful, wonderful. You are doing a course in poetry and creativity, that also I know. Wonderful. And we would like to listen to you also, Parvati, one day about your explorations in the range of poetry and the whole art of composing poetry and things like that. One day, I think you will be able to speak about that. So I'm looking forward to that. Okay, maybe I could also join you in my own observations about the real craft of composing poetry, and then again how the ideas come to you, which is actually the cognition of a design which is forming in your mind. So how it has got a visual impact primarily, and then again, whatever you're writing is actually a mimesis of what you are thought about in your mind. So the original is there in your mind only. So that cognition and the affect is a psychological term. That effect of really composing poetry and then again bringing out poetry, it actually how it goes through a process. That process is very important for me. I feel that rather than the ultimate product of the piece of poetry, the process of creating poetry, this is something which needs to be worked on, especially when you are thinking about a painting or thinking about maybe something which happens in nature. Of course, I'm sure you went to Cockermouth and places like that where Wordsworth was there. And then I remember going to the Lake Poets earlier and daffodils and things like that. There's also a restaurant called Daffodils in Britain. So I went to Ireland. I also went to Glasgow, okay, Scotland, and I saw all the literary points which were inspiring these poets. So that process is something which is fascinating, and Parvati should really look at the process of actually the poem knocking at your imagination and then trying to break forth into the piece of paper or actually coming to the tip of your pen. So that is called the effect, which I think you should work on. Okay?
Sir, I
All the
just
best to you,
completed a
Parvati. Yeah.
Sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt. I just completed a place poem, and when you just said all of this, I was like thinking about, how I saw the places and the people and all the rest of it. And then for months, I kept thinking about it and then, trying to sort of make it into a poem. So now, as you spoke, I was totally reminded of what was the process going on in my mind for all those months. Yeah.
That is really amazing. The process of the piece of poem occurring to you without your knowledge in the subconscious, how it occurs to you and how it rouses you, how it awakens you, and how you are compelled to get up maybe at the middle of the night and then scribble some lines and things like that. So this is really amazing. So you must look up the word affect, the psychological
Absolutely.
term, and then how it is really making you compose and how you are able to comprehend the cognition of a design of poetry which comes to your mind. So this is very, very important. Okay. Yes,
Absolutely.
I think we should not have a one-to-one discussion right now with everybody else. Okay.
Yeah.
Right now, I think I should say bye-bye. You made the whole session has been very, very rewarding, and the contributions of everybody, the presence of everybody, the amazing, charming presence of everybody. I know. I think it has contributed to the immense success of this particular session. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I think we have to
Bye.
call it a day. And as we call it a
Anand,
day, yes, Shinaji.
I could not speak then actually. It is a great experience listening to you, the way you delivered the talk, the dramatic effects you created. You're very creative, Anand, very, very creative. Thank you so
Thank you
much
so
for the
much.
great experience.
Same here. Thank you so
We
much for
will
bringing
reach
Kaimal sir
great
here as well.
heights.
Thank you so much for bringing Kaimal sir. It is my, blessing that I could, he was listening my session. I see it really blessing. Thank you so much for bringing him in as well. Thank you so much, ma'am.
I'm also blessed to meet Rangarajan sir and Lalitha ma'am.
So thank you everyone. And as we leave, because Parvati said it, I could also offer on a very, very benevolent manner a platform for a literary recital someday when you're free with our young group. You can come and recite your poems
Absolutely,
with us. We can have
anytime.
literary discussions. The floor is always yours whenever you are free. Thank you,
Absolutely,
everyone.
I'd love
Thank you
to.
for joining us. Thank you for joining us, and good night. We are really running late, but despite that, there were 20 people staying back to listen to us. Thank you so much, and see you next week. Hopefully, if Lalama is fit, she'll come back and interact with us, or else we'll figure out people who would come in and
You
talk
are
to you.
always referring me as Lellama, and they'll be wondering who this Lellama is.
You are my amma, right? As I told you, my mom's name was Lalita. Her name is
What?
Lalita.
Just
She had a
imagine, my
son
dear
whose name was
friends.
Anand, and
I
my name
had
is
an
Anand.
Anand, but here is an
How can you
Anand.
not mention that?
His Lalita, mother Lalita is gone, and this Lalita is here. A very happy
We both are
coincidence of
left here to
incident.
suffer, right? We both are left here to suffer by ourselves. The grief, the
Exactly.
loss, the
But we shall
irreconcilable
suffer
loss
it.
of them.
But we shall suffer it together.
Yeah, with such people around us, definitely, I suppose that lightens our burden.
So, my dear friends, don't ever miss his classes. My suggestion: I am not canvassing, or maybe I am willingly. You have to bring in more people to this academy,
Thank you
because
so
the
much, ma'am.
quality is such. I was shocked when he told me about the rate that he's collecting. It is too good and noble on his part for words. That's all I can say. These kinds of sessions are, in fact, professionals. As professionals, we charge very, very high, but he is also having the good of people at heart. No? So I'm sure that noble sentiment will definitely make him go heights. No doubt about that. Please
Thank you
bring
so
in double the quantity of people, not only for the money, which, as I told you, I find too reasonable for words. It is for the knowledge that you can acquire within this 1.5 hours time. Okay,
Thank you
bye.
so
Oh,
much.
God bless
All
all.
right, all right. The floor is declared closed. Thank you so much for joining us. See you sometime later. Thank you, and join us for the movie screening on 26th if you are available.
What time?
Good night to all of you. 5 p.m. Lalama. 5 p.m. to 7:30.
Say.
Not 7:30, 7:15. Thank you.